Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. Patriots Against CPS Corruption invites you to attend our March for Texas Children. DFPS has failed the families of Texas. The Texas Special Committee on DFPS has also failed the parents. Time to make your voices heard and surround yourself with those on the same mission as you. Join us on the March for Our Children, September 21st, 2022, starting at 1 p.m. at 701 West 51st Street, Austin, Texas, 78751. And I've got a return guest. I've got Joe Gormley back on the show, and he has been the founder of Saving Fatherhood, which he organized back in 2017. He was last on the show Season 2, Episode 126. We're going to talk about a couple topics. We're going to talk about nullifying the marriage license and what had happened on his daughter's 18th birthday. So I welcome you back to the show, Joe Gormley. How are you?
Hey, I'm better than I deserve, Maryann.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for asking.
Most definitely. So how
That's
did
my
you
pat answer. I say it all the time. It's I get all kinds of crazy responses, and Saving Fatherhood is so first of all, thank you for having me on your show. So great to be here. Before I jump into a monologue, thank you. And I got to tell you, you do some awesome work.
Oh, thank you.
You work really hard. I could never put out as many shows as you do. My gosh. 4 or 5 a week, you said?
And sometimes 2. It depends. It depends.
Man, yeah. That's a lot of work. And so I'm very grateful for your dedication to trying to make some changes in the world of parental alienation and family courts, because boy, we need some, don't we?
Yes, we do, badly. We need family law reform. There's so much we need.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of people have tried a lot of different things, and they haven't worked. And so we just got to keep trying new things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or we can go back to the old things too. There are old things that we should try too. And that's the heart of Saving Fatherhood, where I always say at the beginning of my broadcasts, we are not about father's rights. We're not about mother's rights. We're about our heavenly Father's right to have dominion over families. And that's why I got my Jesus t-shirt on. Jesus
That's
is my
very
superhero.
nice. I like that. Most
Thank
definitely
you.
mine too.
One of my faves. I know he's your superhero too. And you know what? We're not going to end the wickedness of family courts until we get people to repent and pray, because the marriage marriage and divorce were designed by God to operate a certain way. The divorce, of course, was never meant to be, but something that had to be after the fall. And God instructed us on when we can, when we should, how we should deal with it. And we don't follow any of that.
Mm-hmm. And neither do the judges.
No, not in New Jersey, where I am. Not in PA. Although I did get married in PA. I wish I had gotten divorced in PA.
Mm. I don't know. It's hard to say, because when I got divorced, we did it very amicably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the alienation came later.
Right.
Yeah, that's like I saw a meme like that where, the wife said to the man, "Oh, I'll never stop him from seeing you ever. I would never do anything like that. We're going to have the best divorce ever." But the reality is, Maryann, there's no such thing as a good divorce, and people need to stop promoting good divorce, and I think the psychologists love to promote that, because they have these amazing programs where you can sit in their couch or their chair for once a week for the rest of your life, and boy, they've got great ideas that they're going to help you with.
Mhm. Oh, exactly. I mean, w like I said, when we divorced, it was very amicable. In fact, we had friends that would say to both of us, "Boy, you make divorce look easy. We wanna do it too." But they didn't. But, everything everything fell apart
What a
once
thing to
y
say to someone. That's really
I know.
stretching it, you know? Come on. Boy, you guys got such a good divorce, honey. Maybe we should get divorced too.
I
That's
know.
wonderful. I tell people all the time, and I've never really had this happen, but I offer it all the time. I said, listen, well, that's not true. I did have it happen, but just didn't just I've never made it work. I've never successfully done what I pitch to people all the time, and that's to allow me to engage in something I like to call defibrillator counseling.
Mhm,
And defibrillator counseling, it's at savingfatherhood.org. If you go to seek help or something like that, on the links, there's a whole bunch of links at the top.
mhm,
And I got something called defibrillator counseling. What it is I will sit down with you and your spouse for absolutely no charge, and I will attempt to talk your spouse out of getting divorced by telling them how wicked and awful it is, how your children are going to be destroyed. If they're not destroyed, they're going to be severely damaged. And there's no
mhm,
way in hell that you should think that this is going to be good for the kids,
mhm,
because not and so many people are deceived to think that this is something that's going to be better for the kids. Oh, it would be so much better if they weren't around all the fighting.
mhm.
Okay, so you're gonna fight less after you're divorced? Is that what you're saying? I
Right,
just
and
don't see it happening.
right, and people fight through the kids after they're divorced.
Oh, yeah, that's when the manipulation starts, the things you never thought you would do. I mean, actually, I'm sort of blessed in a way that my ex was able to, uh, keep me, she was able to spend enough money in court so that I had no ability to access my child at all, or else I would have been fighting like crazy. I probably
Mm,
would have ended up in family court for years more. But yeah, they just got me knocked out completely. So I haven't seen
mm,
my daughter since May 2015, and on her birthday on July 6th, which I know you wanted to talk about, I did
mhm,
attempt to go see her.
mhm. And you took a friend with you, and,
A mutual friend.
yes, yes, Chris Duvall.
Christian Duvall. He did a great
Yeah.
job. Did a great job. So he was my lead blocker going up to my daughter lives with her grandmother and mother in a beach house in Barnegat Light, New Jersey. And they only live there half the time. The other half the time they have a small ranch in Moorestown, New Jersey. Um, and they're there on weekends, but during the week they spend it at the beach. And so we went down there to deliver a singing telegram. I had a whole bunch of
Mhm,
other ideas and things I wanted to do. I wanted to grab like 50 or 100 people and go on the beach
mhm,
with my megaphone and sing happy birthday, and then get people to march up to the house. And
mhm,
and that really would be a self-serving kind of thing. And um, knowing that the odds are because she's severely alienated. She's been severely alienated since I last saw her. Can't imagine anything's changed. Um, I decided not to do that. Actually, my wife and my sister talked me out of it. They're like,
mhm,
"It really is not going to like that."
mhm,
And
mm,
so the plan was, it was actually a really great plan. The plan was to go do the singing telegram, deliver a gift, deliver a card, and actually leave without showing my face,
mhm,
right? Because in front of my ex or my ex-in-laws, whoever would be there, it would just generate anger and conflict. I mean, if anything, they got to be angry about spending $350,000 in family court, right?
mhm, right.
I'm angry about, and I only spent 100.
Mm,
You should laugh at that, Maryann.
Oh,
It's if you
man.
either gotta if you either cry or laugh. You know, as one of my favorite preachers says, and one of my preachers in my church actually quoted him this weekend. If you can't say amen, you better say ouch.
Yeah, really. I mean, I blew $50,000. It was all on credit card debt.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it goes on the credit card, off the credit card, into the 401k loan, out of the 401k loan. You know, there's two things people fight over before they go to family court. What do you think they are from
Uh,
your perspective? What are the two things?
Money and where they're going to live, maybe?
Money and sex.
Oh, really? That I never even thought of that.
Well, you know, it's probably it's I think sex is actually much more prevalent as a conversation in the Bible, as far as you know, what marital sexual relations are supposed to look like,
Mhm,
than money. But certainly Jesus talks a lot about money, and those are huge conflicts, especially in
mhm,
such a, you know, in a postmodern materialistic society like ours, right,
mhm,
where, you know, the expectations for stuff is so high, right? So,
mhm.
but you know, go ahead, go through family court. You'll wipe out all those expectations for material things. So,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, as well as your, needs, financial needs for your children that they may have in the future, you know,
yeah. Well,
I
my
mean
my my daughter's financial needs are fine. She was just on NPR radio because she won an award playing violin.
oh, yeah, yeah.
I have no idea if she's going to college or not. I'm assuming, since they didn't come after me asking for money, that she got a scholarship for
Mhm,
her violin,
mhm,
because I'm just shocked that, you know, it's July 15th and I haven't heard anything about college.
mm.
So that's my assumption. And she was homeschooled too, so she probably finished. She probably might have already started college. Who the heck knows, you know?
Mhm.
But where'd I leave off with the panda story? So,
Oh,
yeah, where'd I
go
leave
you go
off?
ahead. Oh, you left off that, they talked you out of, going there with a group of people, and you and Chris went to the house, and he knocked on the door
Mm-hmm.
with a, singing panda birthday telegram,
Mm-hmm.
and, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So they live in a beach house. That's where I got derailed. So they live in this beach house. So the main entrance is on the second floor. So I'm going over there. I'm going up the stairwell. Chris goes ahead of me. He knocks on the door. My ex-wife, she answers the door, and he says, "I've got a singing telegram delivery for Amelia Canavo," because she doesn't really she we assumed, I don't really know, but we assumed that she would react better to my name, because it seems that she uses the Canavo name on YouTube and you know, for her violin performances
Mhm,
and social media. So Gormley name is gone, except she does use Gormley for when she goes to the doctor, because I pay her health insurance. But
mm,
the so he said, yeah, I've seen a telegram for Amelia Canavo, and my ex-wife was joyous,
mm,
excited, ecstatic. She said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that Amelia's not here. She
mm,
would love this." And then she asked, "Can I go and could you sing it anyway and I'll record it on my phone?" So she started recording
mm,
on her phone, and I started singing with a megaphone that I was trying to disguise my voice, right? Didn't
mhm,
work. She recognized my voice pretty quickly, unfortunately.
mm,
And I don't know. I said later, I said, you know, I don't know how she remembered what my voice sounded like. Maybe she listens to the podcast,
mhm,
you
mhm.
know? So maybe she does. So maybe she'll listen to this one. So who knows?
Oh,
Um, yeah, so she yelled out something about, "You're not supposed to be here. There's a restraining order in place." I said, "So there's no restraining order, but we will leave. Please tell Amelia we love her and we're here." So anyway, we started walking away, and we walked back to the car, and which was parked at the bay, which is less than a block away. It's actually a block to the bay and about a block to the beach where they're at.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, it's a kiddie park on the beach, like little swings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And that's where we're parked. And there's an old guy in a panda suit at a kiddie park. The cops were there in less than a minute. I mean, literally, I took off the panda head, which you can see behind me,
Mhm.
and I didn't I didn't take off anything else, and the cops right there, and we're just looking at him. He's looking at us. We're looking at him, and then he finally comes up and talks to us. And she had called in, and she called in a false report. She should know well that there was no restraining order, because they pulled the temporary restraining order. I know in Pennsylvania it's called a protective order, but in New Jersey we call it a restraining order. The temporary restraining order was filed, and then you go to court, and then you have to argue why a full-blown restraining order should be put into place. There was never a full-blown restraining order executed, because I was willing to sign a consent order saying that I wouldn't talk about them or the case on Facebook anymore, or on social media, or my podcast, right? Because I had started the podcast at that point. That was October 31st of 2017, and we were just about to start our 13-day trial. It was a custody battle and divorce, all wrapped up in one big event.
Mhm.
So that was it. But I
Mhm.
hadn't seen my ex or my daughter in almost 3 years at that point,
Mhm.
right? So for them to file a restraining order at that time frame couldn't possibly be anything except a pre-trial tactic, right?
Mhm.
So if you were ever going to try and prove or uh, try to accuse somebody of using a pretrial tactic, that would be it. I mean, literally, so it was October. We're talking 2.5+ years, and
Terrible.
then of not talking or seeing her in that long.
Mhm.
My ex didn't talk to me at all in the same time frame as my daughter. So, um, what was to restrain except that I was talking about the case and my daughter being kept from me on social media, say Facebook, things like that.
Well, I uh, when these things are happening, we do have our First Amendment rights. I remember posting, asking for prayers. I would say I really can't say what this is about, or I would say, I need to get my boys back. Please pray today. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you should be able to say this. I mean, if this is, something you can talk about, then why should they want to hide it? It's wrong,
Why
right?
indeed? Why indeed?
Yeah, they want to hide it.
Yeah, they want to hide it. Absolutely. Well, they want to look good. They want to look righteous, right?
Uh-huh.
Everybody desires to be righteous, at least in their own eyes, right? Where
Mhm.
Calvin said the heart is an idol factory, just
Mm,
cranking out those idols. Things
mm,
I want things to worship, and I want them to worship me back.
mm. So now, like, the police, there were what, 3 different, jurisdictions that showed up?
Yeah, I thought it was only two. Chris said there was three. So Barnegat Light and Harvey Cedars, and he said there was one other that popped by and then drove off. But yeah, so it's a small island, couple cop cars each town, I guess, that are active, and they sent the full force out. So not much
I don't
going on either. Middle of
mm.
the week.
But,
Um,
that was at the waste of taxpayer dollars.
Well, not if the state's protecting its own interest, right? So, I'm paying money into child support and spousal support, and the federal government is reimbursing the local municipality And so they've all got they all want to keep their family courts going because they bring in a lot of money.
Well, I don't know. I'm very funny about wasting taxpayer dollars when people do things like this that it just shouldn't have happened.
I don't think you know what? I don't think anybody's cared about the taxpayer in 50 years,
Oh,
60
that's
years,
true.
100 years. I mean, since the New Deal, and I don't want to sound like I have a solipsistic view of history either. The the culture has not um the culture's changed dramatically in a very short time frame in our own lifetime. I mean, dramatic shifts. I mean, just huge shifts in what's supposed to be a family, how many people get divorced, attitudes around birth control and about having children at all. I mean, half the kids out there, I don't know if you know this, if you talk to young adults much, but they think that it's immoral to have too many kids.
Hmm.
Because why? Because you're increasing your carbon footprint. Who brainwashed these kids? And how come they didn't read at least the first 10 pages of the Bible to hear God give the very first command to be fruitful and multiply?
Mhm.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's so sad. And that's really what what we want at Saving Fatherhood is we want people to have the right to live and marry as Christians. And that right has been really eradicated. I don't know about you, but my Christian faith was a target in my divorce. My 13-day divorce, it came up multiple days, multiple times. Of course, I did have my pastor in there testifying at one point, so of course it was going to come up that day. But otherwise, it was really crazy. It was really crazy
Mhm.
because they were my ex-wife tried to insinuate, well, she didn't insinuate, she put it in a motion that I had gotten rid of my addictions for food, alcohol, and what was the other one? Food, alcohol, oh, and cigarettes. But I got rid of cigarettes when my daughter was 1.
Mhm.
I had my last cigarette because I wasn't gonna smoke around her. But yeah, I'd gotten rid of my addictions for nicotine, food, and alcohol, and I had replaced it with an addiction of religion. That's what she said.
Oh, no. They go after the pettiest items they can
Yeah,
think of.
yeah. My new wife, my current wife, my forever covenant wife, who I'm so blessed to have, is she's always like, I don't understand. Like you started following Jesus, and you started uh, changing all these sinful ways, and that's when she didn't like you anymore.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
Mhm.
true. So, anywho, um, but yeah, so that's uh, that's that.
Well, if it's any, when I was going through family court, my attorney told me to stop taking the kids to church because it's making it worse.
Uh,
Whoa.
yeah, your attorney said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had a Christian attorney. He actually now works. He actually works at the university where he got his law degree, Christian University in Ohio, called
Mm.
Cedarville.
Mm.
Um, but you know, in Christianity, you've got a lot of different people in the Protestant and the Catholic and the Orthodox sides that handle things very differently when it comes to government. And unfortunately, I think a lot of churches have sold out to the idea that um, we're just going to cloister in our little groups, and we're going to pray, and God's not going to do anything through us or call us to do anything. We're just called to love one another. And I think that's bunk. I
Mm.
say, how can you love your neighbor while your
Mhm.
neighbor is being drug off to jail and his kids are being stolen, or her
Mhm.
kids? Because this doesn't
Mhm.
happen to just just men anymore, as you well know, Maryann.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
it used to be, it was just a father's issue, and that's how all these fathers' rights came up. But,
Mhm.
since the federal government started, reimbursing states the way they do, and they did it based on who made the most money, and women now 15% of the time make more money than men. So women 15% of the time are going to get their kids stolen.
Mhm.
It's sick.
Or right, or, a woman might have a middle-class job and the ex may have a higher position, but as soon as they go into family court, they suddenly erase that position and create a lesser paying position, which is very convenient.
Yeah, I was accused of that, and, oh my gosh, I mean, they accused me of all kinds of ways of trying to reduce my income. I'm in
Mhm.
sales. Guess what? There's no
Yeah.
such thing as a consistent check in sales.
No.
You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean? So you have good years, you have bad years. Of
Right.
course, these guys, they wanna make your support payments based on your potential income. I was
Mhm.
told I so so my ex left me in 2012, and then 2015 is when she completely cut me from seeing my daughter. And then I find, and 2 days later, 2 days after she said I was no longer seeing my daughter, I filed for a divorce,
Mhm.
and which I had every right to do. And unfortunately, some Christians don't believe you have a right to divorce either, and they should read their Bibles a little bit better.
Mhm. Right,
But
right.
anyway, the yeah, so I had nothing to I had fought to keep my family together for years and years. My ex really left me a month after my daughter was born. She left for
Mhm.
8 months. I convinced her to come back. And then I had 8 years of a dad, and I would never give that up. And I would have stayed with her anyway, because marriage is not primarily about feelings. You make a covenant commitment,
Mhm.
you make a covenant commitment. You need to keep that commitment. That's
Mhm.
it. But we don't enforce that commitment, and marriage in America is sinful. It's
Mhm.
sinful to get a marriage license. It's not sinful to get married. It is sinful to get a marriage license, because that marriage license is antithetical to everything you commit to at the altar.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, I mean, sometimes things are unavoidable and you have to get a divorce.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you get a divorce, you can't hold the other person accountable to violating the covenant,
Mhm.
right? And we normally think of violating the covenant as being only two things, right? Folks will say, well, Jesus said the only way you can get a divorce is for
Mhm.
sexual immorality, which I completely agree with. Other people say, well, it's sexual immorality or uh, adultery. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
sexual immorality or abandonment. And I
Mhm.
agree with that too, because Paul clarified that. But if you're a Christian, you're never allowed to abandon your your spouse. If you're a Christian, you don't leave. Only the unbeliever can leave the marriage and abandon the marriage. And 1 Corinthians 7 says, in such cases, the believer is free. You're free from the marriage. You are divorced. You're automatically divorced at that point. The problem is the church and the state don't recognize it at that point. I can't tell you how many times I've engaged people where their pastors were telling them that they had to pursue reconciliation with a spouse
Mhm.
who had left, who had abandoned them, maybe taken the kids, maybe was sexually infidel, sexually, you know, listen, here's the thing. So people think sexual immorality is limited to adultery. It's not. It's
Mhm.
also, if you have a spouse that won't have sex with you, that's abandoning the marriage bed. That is a that's a violation of Christian sexual ethics. The 1 Corinthians 7 says that your body is not your own. It belongs to your spouse, your wife. and your wife's body is not yours. It belongs to the husband. You belong to each other. You are one flesh. Jesus says when he's confronted about marriage, he says, well, this is not the way it was in the beginning. In the beginning, the two became one. They left their parents and they became one flesh. And he's quoting Genesis, right?
Mhm.
How God designed it in the beginning to be one. So all these other things, all these other immoral things like polygamy, and we it's all coming down the pike too. By the way, we
Mhm.
continue violating God's design for family, and we try to go down this middle of the road, this lukewarm situation where we're trying to convince people that there's something called secularism that's
Mhm.
neutral. There is no neutrality. You're either going towards God or you're going away from God, and we are going far, far away from God.
Mhm.
And people today have opinions that there are certain things that are immoral in sex
Mhm.
and other things that are moral. And I'm not going to get into what is and isn't right here because I don't want to blow up your show or ruin your YouTube feed. But 20 years ago, they had a different opinion. And I'm going to tell you what, all those things you think are immoral sexually right now, people in 10 years and 15 years are going to be telling you you're a bigot.
Mhm.
You're a bigot because you won't let this kind of thing happen. The thing that the people that everybody hates today is going to be forced down our throat as being moral because we don't have sexual ethics. We have no objective standard. The question you always got to ask is, by what standard do you tell me that that's good?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Maryann, I feel like whenever we talk, I talk too much.
No, you're fine. I just think, society has been amoral for the last 20 years or
Mhm.
even longer than that.
Sure. I mean, we've been running away from God for a long time. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and it's really too. I mean, it's really impossible. Here's something I'll say that'll really get people messed up. Um, religious freedom
Mhm.
and the whole separation of church and state. I think people are starting to realize that there shouldn't be any such thing as separation of church and state from a legal standpoint. It doesn't exist in any documents. It was, if I'm sure there's some people who don't know, so I'll mention it. There was a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to some Baptist preachers up in Connecticut, and they said, Danbury, Connecticut, to be specific, and they were worried that when they were redoing the Constitution in 1789, that they were going to add the ability to establish a federal church.
Mhm.
Every state still to this day has a legal right to establish a church, and they all had established churches, but they decided not to do it. But uh, there is nothing legislatively or even judiciously. There was one opinion where a guy quoted Thomas Jefferson, a guy on the Supreme Court quoted Thomas Jefferson, and it became a popular phrase, but it has no legal ramification whatsoever
Mhm.
anywhere. Um, that being said, the founding fathers never really thought that religious freedom was anything outside of Judeo-Christianity.
Mhm. You know, this has been on my podcast several times. Why do we have to go get a marriage license? You know, it's like I don't even want to go in that place to get the marriage license, but I guess they won't marry you without it. These priests and pastors, and they just won't marry you
Yeah,
without.
yeah. Well, I think part of it's the 501(c)(3), right? So they want, in a lot of church governments, there is a plurality of leaders who are lay people who all get a tax credit when they donate. The church
Mhm.
doesn't need a 501(c)(3) in order to have tax-free income, right? But
Mhm.
their parishioners or their flock or the people that come to church and tithe or don't or donate anything, if they want to get a write-off, then they need to
Mhm.
be a 501(c)(3). So, for example, Saving Fatherhood is not a 501(c)(3). And recently I had someone um, give me a donation, and then I told them it's not their fault. Um, but I told them I was not a 501c3 if they were expecting a write off, and they were. So we
Mhm.
rerouted the money to another good organization that is a 501c3. But I refuse to be a 501c3 because you basically create um, a non-government organization, an NGO that's owned by the government. Your
Mhm.
entity is literally owned by the government. You don't own anything.
Mhm.
So I like to own myself and my thoughts and my ideas and my um, decisions to do whatever. If there's going to be laws that are going to prevent me from engaging in X, Y, or Z, that's fine. But I'm not going to volunteer to be put under the thumb of the government,
Mhm.
you know, just so I
Right.
can get some tax breaks, right? I don't
Mhm.
care. I don't care. And people who do care, I don't need them to donate, right? Although I would like some donations.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
Well,
I'm just a boring LLC, so, you know.
yeah, no, I got an LLC with Saving Fatherhood, but so if people donate to me, they don't get a donation. So I'd love to create them a T-shirt with a cool Saving Father logo and a Bible verse or whatever they want. Um, but I do want to solicit donations because I've got an agenda, I've got a mission. I think I want volunteers. I'm looking for
Mhm.
volunteers, and we're talking about this every Sunday night at 9 o'clock on my live stream. And what we want to do is we want to end the marriage license, and we've got a plan to do it.
Mhm. Oh, no, that sounds good.
Do
Um,
you want to? I mean, do you have a marriage license? You got remarried, right?
right, yes.
You
Yeah,
got a
we got
Pennsylvania marriage license?
yes. Ew, yeah,
Yee.
we got the marriage license, and we went and picked up the new Chihuahua for the kids. Yeah, but,
Well, I was going to my intention was not to get a marriage license at all when I on my second marriage. Um, my beautiful bride said, I don't get that. I don't get that. Why are we not getting a marriage license? I can't do that. Then are we really married? She's like, are we really married? I was like, yes, we can get married. We can make a covenant before God and we can be legally married. But that really doesn't, it just didn't sit with her well. And I understand why.
Mhm,
So what we did was we got married in Louisiana because
mhm,
Louisiana and Arkansas and Arizona are the three states in the country that have what's called a covenant option for the marriage license. The problem is, even though that covenant option is very close to what I would say, it covers most biblical circumstances, doesn't cover all, but it does cover most of them. It does require that that either abandonment or sexual infidelity are part of the reason you're filing. But you also have to live in Louisiana,
mhm,
and in order for it to be effective, right? Because they're going to pick the jurisdiction. I live in New Jersey. I decided I need to get a divorce, and they're going to try and ram New Jersey law down my throat, which I don't like.
mhm,
So what we did is we wrote a prenup, and in the prenup, it had nothing to do with material goods. Um, it was completely 100%. We both grew up with an understanding of covenant, covenant, covenant.
mhm,
The Davidic, we talked about the Abraham. I'm sorry, the Adamic covenant, the Abrahamic
mhm,
covenant, the Noahic covenant, Davidic covenant, covenant throughout. And then we talked about what we believe marriage was in our religious belief as Christians, and that we wanted a covenant marriage. And in order to do that, we wanted to make sure that the divorce was designed with the marriage, with the covenant. There's no point in getting a covenant marriage license in Louisiana if New Jersey's going to say we have authority, right?
mhm,
So now we're not planning on executing this, unfortunately, in our legally run world. Unless it gets executed, it doesn't become precedent, so it never, you know, passes muster with a lot of attorneys.
mhm,
But what we did do is we put in there that if one of us wants to get divorced, they have to move to Louisiana, live there for a year, claim that the jurisdiction would be Louisiana, so that would be adjudicated there. And if a New Jersey or Pennsylvania, because my wife's from Pennsylvania, if or a New Jersey or Pennsylvania judge found that too onerous, the state laws of Louisiana would still apply. And we both agreed to that, signed it, notarized it, and got married in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun.
Wow. That's cool.
But I still don't like having that marriage license, and I'd like to get rid of it. And the only way
Mm.
for me to do it and convince my wife of doing it is to get rid of the marriage license. So I'm going to help everyone else and get rid of it too. But I've talked to lots of people. Lots of people understand that the family court is a horrendous, evil thing. We've been trying for years and years now. Since I started before I started Saving Fatherhood, I got involved with folks that were trying to do things in the family court. One of them is the infamous 50-50 shared parenting bill that has passed in 1 or 2 states and really has no teeth anywhere it's passed anyway, because corrupt attorneys can manipulate those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point of even pursuing that in other states when we know it's really a trickle of what needs to happen, of the change that needs to happen. And so actually in New Jersey, we thought I thought that the guys that I was working with did an amazing job, and they did. I barely was involved at all. They'd already done all the legwork getting, I want to say 30 out of 120 legislators in New Jersey lined
Mm-hmm.
up as not as people that would vote for the bill, but people that would actually that wanted to sponsor the bill. Democrats and Republicans. In New Jersey is all Democrats, so you got to have Democrats. And they were all for it, but then the president of the Senate refused to let it get voted on. So now we're hopeful that that would change. But I'm just done. I'm just done with this because I don't think it will change. It could, but it's not enough. It's just not enough. The whole family court is an evil institution. It's unconstitutional. I know a lot of people don't care about the Constitution anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look anything like it reads. I read it on my podcast 2 weeks ago. It only takes 27 minutes to read. I wish more people would read it, but they don't. So we got to get rid of the whole thing. And what we can do is we can go around the legislature of the state, go around this legislature of the United States, and go right to the mayors and right to the sheriffs. And these mayors and sheriffs have an executive role, just like a governor, just like a president, where they have a fiduciary responsibility to not fund any legislation that is unconstitutional or violates someone's rights, and either at the state constitution or the federal constitution. They're not supposed to allow those bills to even pass. Now, so what we got to do is educate mayors and educate sheriffs, and we've got to form coalitions of people that can influence these mayors and sheriffs. Your pastor, your priest, your imam, your rabbi, all these people need to recognize that the marriage license is antithetical to everything you commit in front of your spouse, in front of your God. When your God says the two shall become one, well, and until death do you part, and for richer, for poor, you make all these vows. None of those are enforceable. You can be, we're poor. Oh, you want a divorce? Okay. It doesn't even need to be your port. You just want a divorce. There's absolutely no commitment in a marriage license. It negates that commitment. So why do we have it? It's a violation of your First Amendment right to freedom of religion because it's antithetical to religion. It's also racist, by the way. They used to use the marriage license to discriminate against couples who were interracial. If you had a white person marrying a black person, they didn't like that. You come down to the courthouse. Now, the whole thing came in with Woodrow Wilson, right? Woodrow Wilson, probably the second, he's one of the top 3 worst presidents in history. He laid the foundation for the socialism that FDR brought in with the Social Security Administration, which is probably one of the most egregious violations of the Constitution ever. Um, people don't
Mhm.
believe that. If they don't believe that, they don't know the Constitution.
Mhm.
They don't know anything about the Constitution. There is nothing that authorizes the federal government to take over a third of the economy, pretty much.
Mm.
Just a third of the
Right.
federal budget with an unenumerated organization. So anyway,
Mhm.
that's what we want to do. We need volunteers at Saving Fatherhood, Maryann. And I know I'm going to count on you. Do you have you're in Pittsburgh? You got the mayor of Pittsburgh's number?
I probably do.
Are you in downtown Pittsburgh, or are you in a little town right in the outskirts in Allegheny County somewhere?
Yeah, I'm in Allegheny County. I'm in right by the airport.
Aliquippa?
Oh, no. No,
No,
we're
no,
in
you used to be in
Imperial.
Aliquippa. So
Yeah,
you're
I
like,
was
so are you, where are you, Sewickley? You near Sewickley?
I wish I was in Sewickley, but no, I'm in Imperial. I'm like
Imperial.
5 minutes from the airport.
The smaller the better. We just need some mayors. It doesn't matter who they are. You could be a town of 15 people, but it's a mayor. We got to snowball this. We got to start small, get
Mhm.
some local mayors to jump on board and say, you know what? Yeah, it's an evil institution. And here's the other thing. We can get attorneys to jump on board, because guess what? When you eliminate the marriage license, what do you leave in its place? A vacuum ready to absorb what? Paperwork, contracts, covenants, documents outlining exactly what your marriage is going to be. So here's the beautiful thing. If we have documents that are covenants and contracts that are protected by the U.S. Constitution under, I think it's Article 1, Section 10, that enforces any contract. The federal government has a responsibility to enforce any contract made between two parties that is legal. If it's a legal
Mhm.
contract, then they have the responsibility to enforce it. So there's none of this. So if you guys made a commitment for better or for worse, and it's in your contract or your covenant, preferably a covenant, we can talk about the difference some other time. But whatever anybody wants, whatever lines up with your religion,
Mhm.
you make that documented. And if you decide to get divorced, instead of 13 days of trial, the judge should have just said, okay, where's the video from the marriage ceremony? Oh, for better or for worse. Oh, she abandoned you? Okay, he gets the kid. It should be that easy. I
Mhm.
Is that wrong? I mean, and people say, well, you're not for 50-50 parenting. Oh no. I think the person who doesn't abandon the marriage should give access to the other person that leaves if there's kids involved. Sure.
Mhm.
But it's
Mhm.
not the government's role to tell them to. It's
Mhm.
the government needs to stay out. If somebody abandons that marriage, they get nothing. I
Mhm.
mean, because quite frankly, would you sign up for a marriage where, you know, the person could leave you and take half of your stuff and take your kids? I mean,
Mm.
is that Maryann? Do you say I do? Let's hear an I do.
No.
Nobody says I do to that. It's nonsense.
Mhm.
So why do we allow these corrupt judges, corrupt
Mm.
attorneys, why do we allow them to destroy our families like this? Because I mean, if we had some penalties, guess what? A lot of marriages wouldn't get divorced, don't you
Mhm.
think?
Oh, I agree.
And like nobody wants, people are like, well, that's not realistic, and I'm not bad mouthing my spouse either. My spouse got divorced and she said the same thing. She wouldn't have divorced her ex, if she was a Christian at the time. She wasn't a Christian at the time. She wouldn't have divorced him, because look, you made a covenant commitment to have a kid together, even
Mhm.
if you didn't get married. And because people say, well, we didn't get married.
Mhm.
If you got together and had a kid together, you made a commitment.
Right.
Period. So anybody who doesn't have a contract or a covenant that they get written up ahead of time the way they should, they can all go to family court. Well, actually, I don't even want them to go to family court. I want them to go to civil court, and I want them to have a trial, because the Constitution says that you're supposed to have a trial for anything that's worth more than $20. That's $17.89, but still, you know,
Mhm, mhm.
it's
So
still
then
about 4 hours worth of an attorney's time.
oh, exactly. So
Attorneys
you're
got $5 an hour back then.
and they should still now. Sorry, I didn't say that. No.
I teed-
No, no, no.
I
'Cause I
agree.
did I did have a really good attorney, God bless her, let me tell you. She was brilliant, but, so you're saying, let's just abolish family court and bring everything back down to civil court.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, see,
Absolutely.
I've been
Because the
saying that
family
too.
court is corrupt, it's evil, and they've got all kinds of they're not even laws. It's not
Mm-mm,
legislation. It's not
mm-mm,
something that was uh voted on, put out in front of the people, and your representative said, "This is the will of the people, that we never have a jury in family court, and we have mandatory one person only gets every other weekend."
mhm,
Because I mean, I'm sure your listeners know that every other weekend turns into no weekends pretty darn quickly,
mhm,
and there's no enforcement, none. There
mhm,
might be enforcement if a guy shows up in a panda suit at your house,
mhm. Oh,
but
yeah.
and there's enforcement if that panda suit guy doesn't pay his alimony and his spousal support, which I got for life. I'm an indentured servant. If you ever
Oh,
if
no.
anybody, if you say you never met a slave, I'm a slave.
I'm so
Actually, the only
sorry.
thing that'll save me from, like, being a slave for all my whole life is Social Security, because once I start taking Social Security, I no longer have to pay her. But
You know,
that
they
makes no
shouldn't even be
sense.
doing that. I mean, my poor uncle, he was my favorite uncle, died. He went into an early grave with this. I don't know how much he was paying her in alimony. I think they should just get rid of that. That's pure outright slavery. It's got to
Mm-hmm.
go. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I didn't know he was paying, even though she had remarried, he was still paying her. And I was, like, really ticked off. Of course, I find all this stuff out after he had passed, and I thought, "Why didn't he get another attorney and put in for a modification of some sort and try to end this?" You can't be putting people into slavery.
It is. It's slavery
Uh,
too. Slavery. It's
mhm.
communism too. It's communism. That's what it is.
Well, like, when I got divorced, my ex said, "Well, do you want spousal support?" It's like, "Oh, no." I was a nurse. It's like, I know I was only making $22 an hour. I said, "The only thing that scares me is, like, owning my own house because I never did. But if I
Mm,
need help with plumbing or putting in a new kitchen, could you help?" He said, "Yeah."
mm,
I said, "I don't need spousal support." And we agreed on a child support figure. And, because he had told me his attorney told him that if he paid me what the courts would have made him pay, he would be paying me 2,000 a month and the mortgage, and he would have only $400 left over, and he'd have to stay at his mother's. And I said, "That is stupid. I want you to keep the house because that way when you have the kids, they'll have a familiar place to stay. They'll have their own bedrooms and just you keep the house." In my opinion, it had a lot of bad memories for me. I
mm.
said, "I'm gonna find a farmhouse, and I'm just gonna need you to help me put in a kitchen and maybe a bathroom."
Right.
We were very amicable until he remarried someone who worked in the courthouse.
Oh,
Yes, very convenient.
I remember that from reading your book,
Yeah.
your first book. I didn't read your second book. Is it an
Oh, this
audio book yet?
no, probably later. It's just so expensive to put it into audio. I'm gonna have to wait.
Is it really? What if you read it yourself?
I I just don't know if I can be bothered. I mean, I don't I just it's just the reliving of it. I just don't
Well,
wanna
oh yeah, no, no. I can't
no.
even tell you how. I can't even tell you how I relate to that. I relate to that so much. There's certain
Mhm.
things like I can't stand going back and looking at video. I mean, there's so many things. If I was a vindictive person, which I'm not at
Mhm.
all, and some people might say I am just by talking about my daughter and things like that. There's so many things I could do legally that I don't, like all the audio from my 13 days in trial, all of that,
Mhm.
that's public information that anybody
Mhm.
can buy on a CD by walking into a courtroom.
Hmm.
So therefore, if I felt a desire to go and take portions of that and put it on my podcast, I could,
Mhm.
but there's really no point, you know.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to.
Mm-mm.
I'm not looking to embarrass anybody, you
Right.
know. And then I've got people telling me, that there's, I had Larry. I don't know if do you see any episodes of Larry DeMarco? You had Larry
Oh,
DeMarco
yeah.
on your show?
Oh, yes, he's excellent, yes.
Yeah, he's fantastic, right?
Yeah,
He's
the
got
Law
a real
Center,
heart to serve in this
awesome.
community.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's talking about ways you can sue in the civil court, and I think I know for a fact I've got a civil suit case if I wanted it, and I do kind of want it, but I don't know if I can go through the pain of going through all that stuff again,
Oh,
like
I
you're
know.
talking about.
Well, I tried pushing a case through federal court, which ended up in the appellate court, and it was like 2 different cases. It was
Yeah,
so ridiculous. The judge refused to look at the exhibits, which is hello evidence, and he just ruled everything irrelevant.
if I got an attorney that said that they would pay for it up front, they would I
Mhm.
wouldn't have to fork out cash ahead of time.
Mhm.
I would do it. I would definitely
Oh,
do
yeah.
it. I would do
Right.
it in a heartbeat. I'd go
Oh,
after
yeah.
my in-laws that spent $350,000 to alienate my children from me. I wouldn't go
Exactly.
after my spouse. I mean, but in reality, and here's the weird thing, right? So, as a Christian, I've prayed and prayed about forgiving my spouse and forgiving my in-laws for what happened,
Mhm.
and I do. I forgive them, um, uh, and they are. But that doesn't mean I don't hold them accountable.
Yes, I feel everyone should be held accountable.
Yeah, so I hold them accountable for what they did. I hold them accountable for the alienation that they engaged in. I hold them accountable for keeping my daughter from me, spending $350,000, which could have gone to her. I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
could have gone to a lot of good causes, right? Could have done a lot of good instead of, keeping her father from her.
Mhm.
Absolutely ridiculous. Um, and uh, you know, uh, I don't know. This week, just like my daughter not responding
Mhm.
to me coming down there. She's certainly got my number. It's
Mhm.
all over my
Yeah.
podcast, my website.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm blocked on every social media thing that she does. And so I know where she's at,
Mhm.
and I feel like yeah, it's crazy. I
Mhm.
just resonate with you going through all that muck.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, when God tells us to be at peace, so long as it is within your ability,
Mhm.
he does that for your benefit too, you know.
Right.
All of his
Right.
laws are for our benefit, and I do. I just want to be at peace. Doesn't mean that much to me
Mhm.
if I can survive, but the more they attack me,
Mhm.
um, and it's still going on.
Oh, same here, because I like my oldest, won't speak to me, blocked off of, social media. I've attempted numerous times, I'm sorry, to make contact and doesn't want anything to do with me. And, the thing is, what these kids don't understand is because they were not in that courtroom, is when that judge handed them over to their negligent father, even the grandparents stood up whooping, clapping, and cheering,
Really?
along with his wife's, family members that dressed from the '80s, with the big '80s hair and all that, and I'm like, "Wow, this is like my attorneys, we were, like, looking at them like, "What?" You know In fact, I had an attorney write to me afterwards when I had written that in Facebook, and she said, "It's never funny or laughable when you take a child away from a parent under any circumstances." So, she said, "So there was a lot of lying going on." And I said, "I appreciate you saying that because there sure was."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Maryann, thank you for having me on tonight, and I pray for your children. I pray
Oh,
that you will see them again soon. Pray that they will have a deeper relationship with Jesus and they will seek forgiveness.
hmm I appreciate that. I do appreciate that because my ex has kind of turned them toward atheism.
Did he?
hmm
He turned the boys towards
hmm
atheism too.
hmm
Um, yeah. Well, that's the culture. Did you read the Bible with them when they were kids? Did
Oh
you read the
yeah, we
Bible to them?
Sunday school, everything. Yeah, I mean, we had coloring books, things like that.
When they have kids, you know,
Mm,
things can change. There's so many
yeah.
seasons in life, and I was talking to a guy, called me up, and he was I was talking about my podcast, about going out and seeing my daughter on her 18th birthday, and he was really distraught that nothing happened. He's like, a
Mm,
lot of us are waiting for that 18th birthday, and I said,
mm,
it's really not the milestone that you think it's going to be. I mean,
mm-mm,
it's wonderful that you can reach out to them, but if there's a real alienation situation going on, if they've been brainwashed, then they're still under the thumb of
mm-hmm,
that person, and I really literally have to forgive my ex and my ex mother-in-law on a regular basis, because I mean they're still engaged in that
mm,
alienation. They're still engaged in suppressing her. And I don't think she'll really have an opportunity until she's out of college to really think about things. And I don't know. I
yeah.
I mean I don't know if she's really going to college. I don't know. I think she might just be going to conservatory, or she might be
Well,
flying around the planet playing violin. I don't know. I don't know what she's
yeah.
doing.
It's all this financial control. I think this is the main problem is the financial control.
Yeah, well, right there, that just means you're sold out on materialism to begin with. You're not really
hmm
following Christ. And, we got to pray for our country to start following Christ. I mean, starting to really appreciate God's law. And I tell you what, it's funny. There was a guest preacher at my church, and he mocked Leviticus in his sermon, right? Like he was joking around about how they get from Exodus. I mean, they go Genesis, Exodus, then all of a sudden, and they have every intention of reading the whole Bible, and they hit Leviticus, and it's like this big wall. And I get it. That's hard to do. It's hard to read. But you know what? It's worth it. And Leviticus is some of the most beautiful, beautiful words from God, because it's about justice. And
mm
we are such an unjust society. And for anybody out there who's not a Christian, who's listening to this podcast, maybe they're an alienated parent, man, I wish we all lived under God's theonomic rule in Israel. Your kids would never, ever have been taken.
hmm
Never. Wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So,
Unbelievable what's happening now. I'm sorry.
mm-hmm.
But I'm glad you came on, and I'd like to have you back on again.
Anytime. Always grateful to be on your show, Maryann. Grateful for the partnership, and let's try and do something. Let's get out there and schedule a meeting with your mayor.
Yeah.
I'll come. It's a good excuse to come to Pittsburgh. I got some great pictures of me and my wife. We visited there a couple of times. Permane
Oh,
sandwiches. We're a
oh
big fan
yeah.
of the original Permane's, only in the Strip District, around the corner from Duquesne. I went to
Excellent.
Duquesne, right?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Yeah, I graduated from Duquesne back in '92, 30 years
Oh,
ago.
oh, you're
I
just a
believe it, 30
baby.
years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my first marriage, I flew a priest out from Duquesne to because I was still Catholic back then,
Uh-huh.
and flew him out to marry us.
Oh,
It was
wow.
fun. Father Sean Hogan. I haven't talked to him in forever. He's a very
Oh,
popular guy over there at Duquesne, as a matter of fact. But anyway, he's a good guy. As
cool,
good as
cool.
we wicked evil sinners can be, right?
Right, right. But we will do this again,
All righty.
and, don't jump off. Slam the
Okay.
Gavel's the podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us here again with Joe Gormley in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you again, Joe.
Thank you, Maryann.